Good evening, Browns fans, and welcome to OBR Weekly. It's Wednesday at 7 o'clock, so we're here. I'm Barry. I'm the web dork of the OBR, and that right over there is the legend, Mr. Freddie Greetham. How you doing, Fred?
I'm doing wonderful. Where would I rather be than a night with Tuckin' Browns the night before training camp kicks off?
Absolutely. Back to pack for Greenbrier. You're ready to take off first thing in the morning. So the last thing you get to do is sit here and talk with me. Couldn't ask for more than that. Couldn't ask for more than that. Welcome to the show, everyone. As people stagger in to the program, we are ready to talk Cleveland Browns, and the season is ready to start. Can't wait. It's about time for this season to get started. Listen, if you are unfamiliar with the show, the nature of this broadcast is such that we are very dependent on your comments and questions, the power of the broadcast. I spend a little bit of time before the show creating some questions and stuff to talk to Brett about, but we really prefer to hear your comments and questions and really base the show around what you want to talk about. So please hit us up in the chat rooms in YouTube and Twitch, or I think you can write in from X or Facebook or whatever. Sancho Bermuda is already testing the chat room, and it's working. So, Sancho, we have heard from you. In the meantime, we're going to start off by talking a little bit about news of the day. And the Browns moved some people to various lists today. They put Nyheim Hines on the non-football injury list. That's not a surprise, right? He's still recuperating from his jet ski accident. That's what that's about, right, Fred?
Yes. He said he expected to be able to practice, if not from the beginning, pretty quickly into training camp. So there was four that everybody expected: Jack Conklin, Nyheim Hines, Nick Chubb, and Jedrick Wills. There was three names that something happened. Well, Hines, yeah, he was one of them. There was three that were on the list that something happened between minicamp June 13th and now. And that's Dalvin Tomlinson was listed on the PUP list with a knee.
Yep.
Safety D'Anthony Bell with a shin. And Greg Newsome with a hamstring. So non-football injury means just that. The injury was non-football. Tomlinson and Bell had to have had some type of injury during the mini camp that they had taken care of. So the positive there, and I want to let everybody know, the positive that I saw there is that they're all on the active reserve, or excuse me, the active physically unable to perform list, or the active non-football injury list, which means they're part of the 90-man roster, and they can be activated at any time once they pass a physical. So specifically Nick Chubb, that means if he was put on a list such as reserve, then it means he has to miss the first 4 games for sure. This means that he could theoretically be ready in September for the opener or one of the first 4 games, because he's on this list, to start with. And he now becomes eligible. Even if he's not ready, they can still put him on that PUP list after they make their roster cut downs, and then he would have to miss 4 games. So the fact that he's active means that, he could be activated sometime during training camp or the preseason and could actually theoretically be ready for the opener. We really don't know.
Well, the question is from Zeke Dog, and unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to answer this. And Fumble13 asked the same question in the Twitch chat room about Newsome's hamstring. We just got the word that he has a hamstring and he's on the NFI list, and it's like you said, he's on the active NFI list, so he can be, uh, he can get out and practice pretty much at any time. Um, so no details have been revealed about that, right, Fred? We have no idea what happened to his hamstring.
No, and I don't expect to really hear. There
No.
might be some rumbling down there. The coaches aren't going to answer these questions on the
Right.
record, but I had heard a rumor that he had injured his hamstring. But beyond that, it doesn't seem to be. Again, being on the active list means that it sounds like it wouldn't be a long-term injury. I mean, if one of these people were to have surgery or something like that, that would preclude or make it like, well, they probably aren't going to be able to play this year. We've seen players around the NFL get put on the reserve, physically unable, and they're out for the season. So none of these guys are, but no, I have no idea. It's not good when you have a cornerback who relies on their speed to have a hamstring injury. So it
Yeah.
obviously was something with working out or something that he did, because you usually don't injure your hamstring unless you're running or working out. I don't get one too much walking to the mailbox or
Right.
something like that. So we'll find out a little more, but you can always tell by their moves if they are quick to sign or bring in. Sometimes they have to do that for bodies at the position, but sometimes they just let the younger backup guys get some work and see what they have. I mean, you got from last year, Khalif Halasi, a guy they liked a lot. They kept him around, really didn't play much. They claimed him from the Chiefs. You had Cameron Mitchell, who you drafted in the 5th round last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's coming back for his second year. He missed some time with an injury, so he'll get more reps. They drafted Miles Harden. He'll get some reps. There's probably another few guys underneath there, but by their moves, would dictate the desperation or the degree of the injury. Like I said, I don't see 4 of them we knew, and I think it's just a matter of time. I mean, Conklin made a declaration that he was cleared, so
Mm-hmm.
he's probably very close to being able to, but they just are going to err with the side of caution. You can put them on this list and activate them the second day if you want. There's no downside to putting them on this list, really. So, especially if they're active, because you have 90 and they're one of the 90. So, no, it'll be obviously the marquee one's Nick Chubb, but I don't expect really any movement in that. There's no reason really to, as we've talked many times, to hurry the process. I mean, as much as you want to see him and you want to know he's going to be out there, I'm not so concerned that he plays the first game or even in the month of September. You want to ramp him up. So when he's
Mm-hmm.
ready, he's ready. And close as you can be to 100%, if that's possible.
Right. Right. Let's see here. Now we've got some questions rolling, guys. YouTube, Twitch chat room, hit us up with questions. We will quickly divert into what you want to talk about from what I got going on here. One thing I do want to make sure that we talk about: Amari Cooper contract. Casey Kinnaman, who's hanging out in the YouTube chat room, wrote about it this morning. Gave us his take on it. I gave my take on it in the morning bloviation in the newswire. Um, you know, no surprise here in these quarters that Cooper was signed to a new deal and that they worked that out. But it is a little bit surprising, Fred, from my perspective, is that there was no contract extension at all. It's just a redone deal for 2024. He's a free agent at the end of the year. That's pretty interesting to me. Now, from your perspective, Fred, does this indicate that the team is doubling down on Jerry Jeudy and the young receivers? Or do you think they may be thinking of fishing in the offseason free agent waters with a T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk or whatever? Because obviously they're going to let their number one receiver, as it appears right now, test the free agent waters at the end of 2024.
You really don't know because you're not privy to the negotiations. If they just said, let's just get this done, get into camp, and let's do this for now, and we're still working on getting something done long term. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, it is supposed to be a heavy free agent market next year. And that if they ever get there, it looks like T. Higgins would get there. But so many times these guys that are going to be free agents never make it to free agency. But with the influx and the new market rate, it's going to be expensive. So you can see the marquee guys, people going crazy. If they're going to let T. Higgins go, I could not believe they would let Jamar Chase get away. They would at least do the same thing with him, franchising. And so that's always in your bag of tricks with Cooper. If you really are getting nowhere, you could always franchise him for 1 year. And then essentially, you got 2 years out of him. Mm. I suspect the Browns were hoping to do like a 2-year deal, and maybe a 3rd-year option for the team. And he probably wanted a 3-year deal, something like that. Sure. So by getting this year done, you've sweetened the pot a little bit, but you do have the franchise thing. I mean, they want to see what they have. I mean, Moore's a free agent too at the end of this year. And if they want to retain him, they might want to see what he can do this year. And then they might make the decision, okay, he's not really where we want. We have to keep Cooper, or you want to see how Amari does this year. I mean, he played 2 years real high level. It's hard for me to believe that he's going to drop off that quickly. But and then you have Cedric Tillman, who you have a lot of high hope with. But you have a lot of high hope with Judy. But they're all pretty much, to me, on the other side of the proven. Cooper would be in the proven commodity. The other 3 are in the unproven commodity. So I think they're aware of that. I mean, I don't think that they would want to put themselves in a position, to have nothing at the top of the heap and go into free agency hoping they find a number one receiver. As you know how that works out.
Right.
Like I said, guys never get there. Or a guy like T. Higgins, if he doesn't get traded or he doesn't get franchised, and they let him go, somebody will go crazy. He'll be the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, and he's not even the number one on that team. So that's kind of how that world goes. So it remains to be seen. But I think that I've said on here for weeks, they weren't going to get into training camp with a full-blown holdout and and taking a chance to have an upset player and upset quarterback and disrupt the unity and the offense and the whole thing. So I think it's the best in the whole, everybody's interest. You just really don't know where they left the negotiations. Like, we're done, that's it, or they're still talking and you have something come out that they, okay, this is what we've come up with. So it was a little strange that he was already getting $20 million, I think, guaranteed. I don't know what the incentives are. Is it, hey, if you show up, you get $5 million, or if you have to have 1,000 yards, or what do you got to do?
Right. Don't know if they're likely to be earned or
I'm sure. Yeah. So they could structure it so it's, kind of like give him a $5 million raise. And I think it's justified. I mean, he's the only wide receiver in Browns history to have back-to-back 1,000-yard years in his 2 years here. And when you just pay Jerry Jeudy an average of $17 million a year, and he hasn't really played for the Browns or hasn't really been a Pro Bowler or anything. Cooper's coming off a Pro Bowl. He's 5-time Pro Bowler. So, I mean, I think you had to do something. So I think they'll have a plan, and it seems like Andrew Berry's been able to navigate these choppy waters,
Yep.
pretty well.
Yep. Yeah, I'm pretty impressed with what Andrew Berry has done, and he's made an important decision here, right? If it was me, owner of the OBR, I would have given him a 2-year extension because he's such a great guy, he's such a great character, and all these sort of things. And Andrew Berry is more analytically driven, and he's playing it safe so far with Cooper.
Well, he also has Jimmy Haslam's money and blessing. If you had untold fortunes to tap into, you'd probably be generous too. But
yeah,
it's easy for him to
situation.
say, "Here's another $5 million. Are you happy now?"
Right. I can do that with like $5, but $5 million, whoa, But at any rate, we've got some great questions here. We're going to divert into those questions. Keep hitting us up in the chat room. We will keep going with your questions as long as you keep firing them in there. Let's go to Casey Kinnaman, who, as I stated, was hanging out in our YouTube chat room. And Casey says, what player entering their second year do you foresee making the biggest leap from their rookie season? I've got an answer to this if you don't, Fred, but I'm guessing we're going to say the same player.
Well, they're hoping Cedric Tillman, does. They're hoping he becomes at least the third wide receiver, if not the fourth, for sure. And they're going to need him if they're going to play a spread offense and they're going to throw the ball around. He showed enough glimpses last year in practice for them to trade Peoples-Jones. They decided we're not going to try to keep him. We're going to move on from him, free up the spot. And it wasn't like Peoples-Jones was the fourth or fifth receiver. He was a starter opposite Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
So, unfortunately, Tillman got dinged up and kind of finished with a concussion and, didn't play in the playoff and in the last game or two. So, I really think I talked to Andrew Berry about him specifically in one of our sessions, and he said they really do believe that he has the ability to move up and be one of their top 3 receivers. So I think that will also play big into the Amari Cooper future. If this guy emerges, if he or Elijah Moore really emerge and become the player they think they have, along with Judy, then those are your top 3 moving forward. I still don't know if they're ready or would move on from Cooper. I still could see him coming back and offering him another, if he has a big year, another, big 1-year contract or something with guaranteed money or something like that. So, no, I think Tillman would be, to me, the odds-on favorite. I mean, DeJuan Jones, I think he made a big leap as a rookie because he got thrown into the starting lineup like in the second game and he played well. So I don't know if he'll leap that much more than going from what he did, but he played pretty well. But I think Tillman would be the guy that has a chance to make the biggest jump for sure.
Right. Let me tell you another player that I really liked from last year's crop. He was undrafted. And I don't think he's going to get the opportunity to take that big leap. But Ronnie Hickman, I know that they really liked him. They were thinking about drafting him, and he really showed up when he got an opportunity to play. Like I said, he's going to be buried in the depth chart a little bit, but he's just a player I really, really like.
Well, there's several like that. I mean, Mohammed or Mahmoud Diabate, undrafted linebacker, has a chance because their linebackers right now are not, household names. And you mentioned Hickman, the Cameron Mitchell thing, if Newsom has a ongoing if that hamstring is severe, they might need Mitchell to move up and be one of the top three because they play three cornerbacks. So if Newsome's not one of them by the time the season starts, somebody's going to have to be one, either Mitchell or the kid they drafted, Harden, or Halasi, or they'll have to go out and get another one, make a trade like we've talked about throughout the offseason, is use some of your depth at maybe a position on the defensive tackle, somebody that you're not going to be able to keep, maybe trade them or flip them for, an area that you have an injury. But I will say if Newsome, if it's a long-term thing, that would be a big blow to the defense, even if he isn't your best corner, even if he's your third corner, you're going to have somebody be able to step in and take that spot.
Yep. Let's go next to Red Leader 74. He says, "Hey guys, what is the purpose for Cade York? Practice squad or the new kick thing, the new kickoff system?" And we'll might get some hints from that once we get to Greenbrier, right? If we're seeing Cade York used a lot on the new kickoff, right? Since Dustin Hopkins got himself hurt on kick returns, maybe they'll sacrifice Cade York.
Yeah, I know some teams are experimenting with using a position player to do that because you don't have to have the big leg. You just got to be accurate to get it within the 20-yard line to the goal line. I thought when they signed York, because they really liked that Lucas Havrasik, and everybody knows we made fun that they had three kickers during some of the offseason. That's because Dustin Hopkins wasn't around, but then they moved on from Havrasik with York. I really thought they know he's a good kicker. I mean, like we've been reporting, I mean, the guy makes it from all over the field, in practice. There's no question about the leg, and sooner or later it's going to click in for him. Y'all have heard the story about Daniel Carlson. He gets cut, and then he's been the Pro Bowl like every year since, and it's like everybody knew he was good. Well, I thought York, that they were like trying to continue the relationship. This was the last year for Hopkins. He had a $3 million deal. I didn't think they would take the chance on cutting him and save money and go with York. But I really thought that they were going to try to convince York that this is the last year with Hopkins. We really like you. Stay around here on the practice squad. And if you don't have another opportunity, and you could be our kicker in 2025 and beyond. Well, I think they did the right thing by locking up Hopkins. I mean, he's only 33. Kickers go till nearly 40 or more. And so, I mean, at this point, York is insurance. I mean, Hopkins has had an injury problem, and he didn't last year. He was great until he tried to chase down Dameon Pierce. So I don't think he'll be doing that. But no, I don't think there's any way in the world they're going to keep two kickers on the roster. They may try to, if York doesn't get claimed, they may try to re-sign him to the practice squad because they have tried to have guys on the practice squad in the past, an extra kicker or punter or whatever. So, yeah, I think that move was made before the Hopkins extension came about. And it might have been, well, what if Hopkins, we can't sign him, and he's in the last year of his deal.
Right.
So I think more than anything, they really like the guy. And I can almost guarantee it. This guy's it's going to click with him sometime. And whether he's with the Browns or not, he's going to be kicking in the NFL for a while. I mean, he's got a great leg, and he seemed to have the temperament that he wasn't affected by the crowds and that, but I don't know what, it's a different animal, in the NFL. And we saw in the preseason last year, they were going to stick with him up until I think the final preseason game against the Chiefs. and he missed one or two there, and they just said, we cannot go into a season with the team we have and lose games because of the kicker. And lo and behold, Hopkins, I think he won 4 or 5 games with game-winning kicks.
Tremendous.
I don't know if I don't even know if they make the playoffs last year if York was the kicker, because if he'd have missed just 1 or 2, they wouldn't have made the playoffs. For sure.
Right. And Sancho Bermuda in the chat is bringing up the name Daniel Carlson, the Vikings kicker who, we've talked about here, whose story may echo eventually Cade York's story as being a drafted kicker who sooner or later gets it and has a heck of a leg. Speaking of Sancho, he asks, is there any backstory to the OBR report? Boy, is there a backstory to the OBR report. Barry started 20 years ago, right? Well, actually, more like 30 years ago. The OBR started in response to Art Modell moving the team to Baltimore. I was unhappy about that, to say the least, and basically started a website to protest it. And then the Ravens stunk for their first 3 years while they were gone. And the site sort of morphed into making fun of them. And then over the years, in 99, we started covering the Browns instead. We called it Browns TNG. We then worked with Bernie Kosar for a few years, called it Bernie'sInsiders.com. And we took the name Orange and Brown Report back in I don't remember, 2005, 2006, somewhere around there. So we've been around 30 years now. And I think we show it. You quite obviously have been around for a while. But thank you for hanging out with us, whether you've been around 2 years or 20 or 30, hanging out with us. I have a history of the OBR series that I'm going to finish someday. It's got 5 parts to it already, and I need to write another 4 parts to it someday when I have the time. But thanks for asking. I appreciate it. So, Fumble13 wants to know, I don't know what's under the asterisks, but he wants to know if you're going to hit the casino scene. Are there casinos down at Greenbrier, Fred? Is that a gambling sort of thing? I thought it was like a conference center and all that.
We're not allowed to, really get in there. It looks like the White House as you approach it, but Kevin Stefanski invited us over last year for the first night, and it was hard to find the place, but it was the home of Sammy Snead, one of the greatest golfers ever. And so they have a sports bar called Slammin' Sammy's. And we met over there and for a couple hours and just kind of off the record, just, he had, some hors d'oeuvres and drinks flowing and things for everybody, the beat writers. It was good. By the way, we're doing that tomorrow night as well. With him, same place. But I went over there that night, and then we went over another night where it was kind of an unofficial tour where we were allowed in to walk around, and there was a live golf tournament getting ready to start, and it was all set up. And so I walked around the golf course a little bit, took some videos and stuff, but there probably is a casino. I'm not into that. And so I don't know if there is or not. I didn't hear anybody else talking about it. But I wouldn't be surprised if there is one. He probably knows there is one. Right. It's a humongous deal. I mean, it's so big. I mean, it's an adventure trying to find your car wherever you park after the buses are taking you around, to all these different places, and you're trying to, I don't know, I think I'm here. But but as far as the casino, no, I will, if there is one, I'll report about it and say, yeah, there is one, but I did not go in there. I'll tell you a quick story. My family, we went to a place in the Bahamas called Atlantis and on a vacation. and this was back when Patrick Ewing he was recently retired, but he was like a 6'11" guy that you couldn't mistake him. And there was a casino in there, and to get to where we were going to eat, you always had to walk by the casino. And no lie, I saw him one night in 20 minutes drop over $100,000 on blackjack. Just
Holy
like
moly.
there was a big crowd around him, and and they said he had been there 15, 20 minutes before. And I don't know how much longer he went, but I know what he was putting down. And in the time I was standing there, he was going through it. And, that's why some guys don't have much after they get out of their playing careers. It comes and goes pretty quickly.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, I cannot imagine, in a million years dropping that kind of money. But hey, well, whatever. To each their own. Another Greenbrier question. This one from Tysuck15. He asks, since Greenbrier is remote, does the press corps hang out after hours more than you otherwise do? So is a lot of partying going on with the press corps there, Fred?
We don't stay at the Greenbrier. That's in White Sulphur Springs. They have a block of rooms for us in a town called Lewisburg. It's the next exit up. And we're at a Fairfield Marriott, nice hotel, but it's not the Greenbrier.
Right.
Much less expensive. But yeah, all the beat writers pretty much are there. And there's usually kind of a unwritten rule that we go out to eat as a group, or anybody that wants to go out to eat, gathers up. There's always somebody who makes reservations, kind of like that's their deal. They like to do that stuff. And I'm not going to name who does that stuff, but yeah, we usually, but I'll just be honest with you. My only drawback with that is these guys go so doggone late to eat. I like to eat supper like 5 or 5:30 or so.
Right.
They're out there. They get reservations at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and and I'm almost ready for bed by then. But I did go, and it's a nice little town. Actually, they've got several Italian places. They're pretty good. They're more like mom and pop places, and so that's where we end up going. Those type places. We're not going to the Applebee's or the. I will say last year though, right on the property from the hotel is a Ruby Tuesday, and that was the first time we went out, and I don't know what it was. We were late or something, but we went over there, and it was a buffet, and we're there. And this is 15 minutes from the resort, right? The resort's got everything, and we're all standing to get seated. And here comes a big old fella, and it's Zadarius Smith. And he wants to get him some Ruby Tuesdays. But when he saw us, he kind of turned around and went back and got in his car. And we watched. And after we were seated, he did come back in and went on the other side. But I had heard they had a really good salad bar. And I think he must really like their salad bar because they have anything you want at the Greenbrier. And he drove 10, 15 minutes over to this place. So, yeah, we'll hang out. I'm not a big, drinker or anything like that. But a lot of them, have a good time and do, but we usually go out to dinner somewhere every night, and it's kind of modest. It's not like you'd be in some major city. These are kind of country towns down home. And we had one last year, an Italian place, and it was an old house redone. And out of the corner of the eye, something moved, and there was a mouse ran across the back room. Well, it freaked out some of the women and some of the guys, and some of them were done eating, and we said something to the waitress, and she said, oh, did you see Stuart? And, we didn't think it was that funny, but it was kind of, you got to remember, we're out here in the mountains of West Virginia.
Right.
And I'm a little more of a country guy than most of the media people. They're city slickers by and large.
Not used to seeing mice. Oh
Critters.
boy. Yeah, yeah. I get it. I get it. All right. So hang on a second here. Let me hide that comment. I just want to talk real briefly about our sponsors, Core Home Fitness. Our producer Ian is taking the night off, so you won't see the normal graphics of the adjustable dumbbells and all that sort of stuff here. But I can tell you to go visit corehomefitness.com, which is where you can find them, and check out their assortment of lifting equipment and all the stuff that you can use to take the gym home, get yourself in shape. Products like the Glute Drive Plus and the Fight Master and all this great stuff. They can really help you out if you're trying to get yourself in shape. And they've got a US-based support team, fast shipping, hassle-free returns, really know what they're doing, and they sponsor the OBR. Put all that together, you got an awesome company, well worth your interest if you're interested in getting yourself in shape at home. CoreHomeFitness.com for the ultimate in-home fitness equipment. They rock. Check them out. And thank you very much for sponsoring the OBR. All right, let's go back to our questions. This next one from Cyper66. He asks, how much do you think we will see of Deshaun in the preseason, assuming that his shoulder is good? That's an interesting question that I'm sure Stefanski's going to be wrestling with.
Yeah, I mean, you got, weighing, timing, all those type of things versus health. I just think unless Stefanski changes his thinking radically, he's going to err to health. And I kind of agree with Watson. I feel if the guy stays on the field, he'll be fine. Mm-hmm. And the last thing you want to do is lose him to some type of injury in the preseason. So I think he'll get a little work, maybe typically like other teams do, they play a quarter, or something. But I don't think they're too worried about all that timing and all that. They have the Vikings coming in. That'll be up tempo practices, and that'll be kind of like a real tune up. I expect the last 2 years with the Eagles have been that's been bigger than the preseason game. I mean, They don't even play the starters in the preseason game. They do it all in practice. So they can control it. That's what they like. They know the quarterback won't get hit, those type of things, and they could do as much up tempo and all that. You always risk the over exuberant rookie that's trying to make a name for himself and does something. It might be a cheap shot, but in their excitement to try to make the team and make a mark, they do something and it hurts your team, with an injury in that. So I think he'll play some, but I think a lot of it will be in practice and like I said, focal point I think will be the Vikings coming in for practices, a couple weeks from now.
To me, the counterpoint to that is just that Watson is a notoriously slow starter. It seems like it takes him a couple games to get warmed up, and we just can't afford that in 2024 because the last half of the schedule is so brutal. We can't have the Cowboys be a warm-up game for Deshaun Watson. He's got to be ready to go. You know what I mean? And I understand the potential recklessness of having him take live bullets, during preseason, but we can't afford for him to come out and lay an egg against the Cowboys. That's the only thing that goes through my mind.
Well, how do you get it? How do you know he's going to be sharp by playing against, in the final preseason game?
I don't know. I'm just
against guys,
get him some reps
against fourth string guys, from another team. So, yeah, I get all that, and I'm just saying I think Stefanski will air for having him 100% healthy for the home opener as opposed to taking a chance prior to that. He played pretty well against the Bengals last year, in the opener. They got a win. I think that, he has not been out of the chute quickly.
Right.
And I think that's part of the idea of changing the offense, trying to get him going quicker in a game, getting a rhythm, get some quick completions, and by spreading things out. So it will be one of the storylines of camp for sure.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Deshaun Watson really learned a lot from the Baltimore game, where he was playing hurt, right? He had problems with his shoulder, whatever, and he was just taking what they gave him, right? He was throwing a lot of screen passes. He was just taking what the defense gave him, and I'm hoping he can come out with that sort of thought process again this year, right? Where it doesn't have to be all on him, right?
Well, I heard him. I think it was in his own podcast, kind of in-house, mentioning that. And I took heart that if anything came out of the injury is that he realized, he doesn't have to do it all himself. Contrary to popular opinion, he does put a lot of pressure on himself. He feels, that he wants to be worthy of what the Browns gave up for and the money and the contract and all that. He isn't just like, hey, I got the money, I don't care. I think he really does want to. I mean, once you got the money, you got the money either way. He wants to be considered an elite quarterback. He was before he got to the Browns, and there's a lot of reasons why he hasn't, but I do think that he was trying to take it all on himself, and I think he's got to look, and I think he does see, got a really good defense on the other side, and I don't have to do this all myself.
Right.
I got Cooper, I got Njoku, got Chubb, I got all these weapons. Just do my job and get the ball to them, and things will take care of themselves. I think he gets in trouble if he presses or tries to do too much himself. Same could be said of any quarterback. Baker Mayfield got in trouble when he tried to do too much himself. So,
right.
I just think that he'll figure it out and it'll come together. He just needs to be on the field long enough to let it happen. We really cannot say that he has had a consecutive period of time, week after week after week, to build on. Every time he started to get something going, he'd be sidelined.
Right. I have read so many national pundits this year talking about how great the Browns roster is and go, but Deshaun Watson, but Deshaun Watson, but Deshaun Watson. I just want to see Deshaun go out there and ball so badly this year. And I'm sure, most Browns fans do. TySox15 again asks, any pre-camp sleepers that you envision making noise? Any sort of hidden gems out there that you expect to see something from this year, Fred?
Well, that's kind of hard to know. Like, it's a broad. I don't know if you're talking undrafted guys, if you're talking guys that were on the team that didn't play much,
under the radar type players.
I think Nathaniel Bookie Watson has a chance to, for a 6th-round pick, that would be a sleeper if he ends up, getting in the rotation. I don't think that free agents, a lot of them were brought in. I mean, Devin Bush, is a sleeper, a former top 10 pick who has done nothing really since his injury. If he could come alive and they could get, if he could really be an impact player, that would be, to me, a sleeper. Miles Harden, 7th-round pick, if he can step in and be the slot corner, especially if Newsome is down for a time, that could be a sleeper. But I think some of them, like Cedric Tillman, wouldn't really be a sleeper because they're kind of expecting him to step up. I'd say Siaki Ika could be a sleeper because you don't know. He could really be a guy that steps up this year and makes an impact, makes the team, and is in the rotation. A lot of people think he might be on his way out because they added they re-signed him, but they drafted Mike Hall and they signed Quentin Jefferson. So that kind of tells you they added more to the position for a guy they drafted to be one of those guys. So as I think about it, and Khalif Halasi, they really like him. They never waived him or anything once they signed him. He was on the active roster all year. So they were afraid that they would lose him if they didn't keep him on the roster. He could be a guy that could make an impact. So some of these young guys, Isaiah McGuire, who knows? Maybe he could make the rotation this year and so some things. So some of them younger guys that didn't get a chance much last year, Cameron Mitchell, I think they all have a chance to be those type of guys.
Right. I was actually going to mention Quentin Jefferson in response to this because he was kind of an under the radar signing. Not a lot of people talking about him, but he got 6 sacks last year, and in the middle of that line, he could be a very pleasant surprise for people who are not counting on him.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, some people might not be, but I mean, I think they signed him to be like a starter.
Yeah, exactly.
And so yeah, I don't consider him a sleeper because I think he's going to be, opposite Dalvin Tomlinson as the starter in there with Shelby Harris.
Yeah, I just say that because there's not a lot of buzz about him,
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think he winds up starting. All right, Fumble 13. Would you trade a wide receiver to fill the second tight end spot? Let's narrow this down a little bit. Let me put a name there. David Bell, for example, might not make the roster this year. Rookie, still has promise. Would you trade a David Bell to fill that second tight end spot?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see the backup tight end necessarily, either the 2 or the 3 on the roster right now. I mean, you got Njoku. I don't know if they feel Akins is all they need. The only other tight ends they have are Trayton Welch, an undrafted. He could be a sleeper, from Wyoming. And Zaire Mitchell Payton. He's been on the practice squad for like 3 years. I can see them trading an area. I think I mentioned this before. If it comes down and say Siaki Ika shows he can play, they could trade Maurice Hurst. Or if Ika shows he can't play, they could choose to try to trade him. I don't think they're going to move on. They wouldn't really want to cut a 3rd round pick so quickly. But there is going to be some depth, I think, on defensive tackle. Obviously, if there's injuries, that changes things. But say David Bell. They drafted Thrash, so they might be willing to move on from Bell. And if they could get a team, there's other teams that's going to have depth at tight end, and they might have to cut a decent tight end. So I could see Andrew Berry kicking the tires and saying, okay, we're going to cut this guy. You're going to cut that guy. Why don't we just swap them? So you get who, and you don't have to go through the waivers and claiming and all that. So I think that's what they will do, when training camp comes to an end, and see where they have after injuries. Okay, do we have a legitimate 3 tight ends? I don't think you can go into the season with just 2 tight ends.
Right.
Gio Ricci was a hybrid fullback tight end. I don't know if they're expecting him to be the fullback like Nick Harris was or be like Harrison Bryant was. If he is, then maybe they'll only keep Jordan Akins behind Njoku. But there's several positions. Linebacker, depending on what happens in training camp. I think they get to training camp, look and see what they have, like they did last year. And at defensive tackle, they decided we need to get some more. And they went out and got Shelby Harris. Shelby Harris did not come in. They didn't sign him till after Greenbrier, at least 2 weeks into training camp. And he was probably one of their best, if not their best, defensive tackle last year. So they have a list of 30-something guys. that are available still, that if they don't like what they see with the young guys or they get injuries, they might look at free agency, but they also will look to make trades with teams that have depth at a position that they could need a guy.
Right. I think that's the answer to your question too, Teddy, that you posed about Barry signing a veteran or two late like he has the last couple of years. There's a real possibility of that at some of these positions where the Browns, very few roster holes on this team, but tight end might be one of them, where or maybe linebacker might be another position where you might look at someone late in free agency. We've still got like 8 questions, Fred. So let's try and rock and roll through some of these here. Next one from Ty Sox. He says, "Do you see any parallels between Cooper and Landry's career paths late in their Browns careers?" That's an interesting question.
I don't think Landry was more of a possession guy. Cooper's got some speed and can get open deeper, but I think Cooper's a much better player. He's made the Pro Bowl 5 out of 7 years or 8 years. I thought Landry was good. I mean, and he did a lot, was part of turning around the Browns, but I think they have a little different skill set. But I'm not of the opinion that Cooper is over the hill, that he's, his talent has dropped off. I mean, Landry, it seemed like all of a sudden he wasn't quick enough to get open.
Right.
And I didn't see that problem with Cooper. And if he wasn't in contested balls, he went up and came down with it, even if he didn't have a lot of separation. So, yeah,
right.
their playing career path could be, but it remains to be seen. I don't think just because they signed him this year means that this is his last year with the Browns.
Right. Landry did not go on to success after the Browns, and Cooper has not shown any signs like that. Larry asked, "Do the NFI injured players have to be on the active 53 to start the season?"
I don't know that. They changed some of the rules this year, that they made some exceptions where you used to have to put somebody on the 53 before you put them on injury reserve or they're out for the season. I think that there was an adjustment that there might be a couple players that can be, that you can not have to release him. Like think of Jacob Phillips. Every year it seemed like he got injured. They didn't want to put him on injury reserve for the season, so they put him on the 53 roster, even though they knew he couldn't play. And that took a roster spot. So they made some adjustments where there was, I think, a couple exceptions. I don't know how the non-football injury players, I don't know how that falls into line. I know that they count towards the active roster, the 90. So you make a move, if you bring in another guy, then you don't have to put them on another list. But I really don't know. The NFL doesn't make things too simple they change these things all the time. You about the time you get it down, then it's like, oh, it's 6 games, not 4 games, or this or that or whatever. But short answer, I don't know.
Okay. Kelly asks, given the potential for a more wide open offense, what's currently behind Njoku, do they keep 7 wide receivers?
Well, I think that it comes down to returners. They've talked about the returners being more important this year with the 2 guys in the kickoff. I know James Prochet, he's listed as a wide receiver. If he makes it, probably be as a returner along with Nyheim Hines and stuff, but you could count him as a 7th receiver. Jalen Darden's still on the roster. He's kind of the same type situation.
Right.
But I would think 6 would be about the most. like I said, they got a guy, Gio Ricci, who's kind of a fullback tight end. And I think that he could be more of the Harrison Bryant, Nick Harris. If you remember last year, Harris was listed as the starting fullback, and Bryant came in a lot as the blocking guy as well, blocking tight end. So they might have feel like they got one guy to take two spots, but I don't know.
Yeah. Understood. I've got a theory on this one, but Fumble 13 asks, does Fred talk to the national media much? And if so, is the dislike for Watson still so strong that they think because of him that we'll finish last in the division? You want to hear my theory, or do you have your own theory, Fred?
Go for it.
All right. I think that the challenge for the national media is that the AFC North is really, really good. Every single team in the AFC North is really good, and they are looking for anything that they can to sort them in order, right? They're looking for any problem on any team that they can point to and say, oh, this puts the team in last place. And they think that they have it, Deshaun Watson, because of his performance the last 2 years at a very important position on the Browns. And so they point to that. They say, Deshaun Watson's going to hold the Cleveland Browns back. Therefore, we're predicting the Browns for last place or third place in the division. It's an oversimplification, but that's all you can really do when presented with a very difficult problem like who is going to, come in first and second in the AFC North, because so much of it's going to depend on injuries. All the teams are so good. It's, really going to be a gauntlet to run through, and the Watson's just an easy scapegoat to point to if you're a national pundit being asked who's going to finish where in the AFC North. That's my theory. What do you think of my theory, Fred?
Well, you've heard me talk probably, but because I've said it, any of these teams could get first place, any could get last place. If you say Lamar Jackson's out for the season, Ravens are last place. You say this, Fields or Wilson are out for the season, Steelers easy, last place. Watson, last place. Burrow, you saw last year, Burrow's out. The Bengals got last place. A lot of people thought they were going to the Super Bowl. So that's what you don't know. And yeah, Watson hasn't proven yet that he can stay on the field. Really last year was the injury thing. Before it was because of suspensions and all that stuff. So it's hard for me to I mean, all you have to look at, they give Joe Flacco all the credit in the world, and he did well, but they played 5 different quarterbacks. The Browns had a really good team, and if you just had average play from your quarterback, you're probably going to go to the playoffs with this roster. And that's why, it befuddles me why they think the Browns are going to be so bad with Watson. I don't think he has to be, Lamar Jackson this year for the team to be good. It's just the division is very tough, and you're going to have to win the division or come out, escape that gauntlet in order to be in a position to make the playoffs.
Right. Question from the world's fastest fat man, as opposed to me, one of the world's slowest. Question: a lot of last year's success seems based on team chemistry and culture. Have we seen any of the new personalities show promise here? Players, coaches, how visible has Vrabel been? So injecting some new culture, via the coaching staff this year. Have we seen any of that yet, or is it too soon to tell, Fred?
Well, I think it's too soon. That's one of the reasons they're going back to Greenbrier. I mean, the players complained about being a remote place, but then all year they kept referring back to digging down, back to the beginning of the training camp in Greenbrier. And I think that's what they're trying to recapture. Mike Vrabel, he's been very animated out on the field. I think that's a great addition. He isn't a guy that's just wanted to collect a check and maybe sit in a TV studio. He wanted to be out, with the players and learning and teaching. So you still have your defensive coordinator. That sets all the tone on defense all the way down, even with new coaches. Ken Dorsey's the offensive coordinator, but I still think, Kevin Stefanski, has been there 5 years now. He sets the tone on offense. They have a culture that has been built. A lot of the leaders are in place, and so I think they're going to be fine.
Okay. One more question, and we're going to wrap it up for the evening. This one comes from Casey. He says, Fred, do you anticipate the day off, day on practice approach to continue early on in training camp for Deshaun Watson?
I really don't know till we get there. I think he'll be out there practicing pretty much from day one, and they may give him like a veteran day rest, maybe 2 days and 1 day off or something like that. That's probably the next step. I don't know if it'll be 100% full go. It's one of the reasons they have 4 quarterbacks, so they can spread the load out with the throwing and all the things that they're going to be doing. So it's a good question. One of the things we'll ask Kevin tomorrow night. Probably tell us a little bit, but we won't be able to report all the details, but get some background on what they're thinking.
And this is the week we get the big story on who is calling the plays, right? He promised that we get the big story on who's calling the plays. So
yeah, I'm sure we'll get some. The Haslams usually do their once a year State of the Union, on the first, second day. So be a lot of stuff reporting on. So check us out every day. We'll have everything that's going on.
And remember, Fred is smart. You can save a lot of your per diem ordering the early bird special. Makes me smart too. My bedtime's like 8:32, Fred. So that's
make sure Barry knows that there's a per diem. What the per diem is.
$5 a day gets you through, right? When you get the early bird app. All right, thanks guys for hanging out with us. Fun as always. We'll be back again next week, Wednesday, 7:00. Talking Browns here on OBR Weekly. Thank you, Legend. Appreciate it as always.
Yeah, we'll have football to talk about. Should have a lot to digest in a week.
All right. Thanks, guys, for the questions. We'll see you next week.
See ya. Bye.